algorithm, the corruption command, and they did a profile on what makes an officer corrupt, and they tend to be that in their second 10 years of service. So you do 30 years, so usually in the 20 years onwards, they're middle-aged. They might never really have got in trouble before, but all of a sudden it's financial restraints that start doing it. So people start getting caught up. Divorce is very, very common in the police. There's many factors, ego being a major player, but also civilians not really understanding the pressures of policing, and you've got to really
is it the pressures of policing, or is it the fundamental budget issues that the police have? Because if the police were funded 10 times to what they are now, the pressure wouldn't be as heavy, I would imagine, right? Is it not workload?
Yeah, one thing that cut corruption in half was treating police properly. So they housed them properly. It was Sir Edmund Davis, he reviewed it, and he said, right, the police are underpaid, that's why corruption is rife. They're employing local lads to work local areas. It causes corruption.
Yeah.
Right. But the police have gone back to that. They've cut everything. They stripped as bare. So Edmund Davis brought in his recommendations, which got implemented. So they built housing, section housing, married quarters. They got huge allowances. Their wages went up. Corruption really was, the reserve of these elite investigative units, shall we say. Yeah. And I'm going to show the different strata of corruption. It is, we can sort of, it's a spectrum as we were on about earlier on.
Yeah.
So it got out. But what the police have done now, the government's done it, has stripped it bare again. And they're employing what I would say is substandard people, and they're employing locals as well. And they're putting them in the areas, what they call the ends, where they live. And it's going to call you. We're going to see corruption, and we're seeing it. We're seeing it. Not just are we seeing corruption, we're seeing a lot of perversion, and that seems to crop up a lot. A lot of officers getting done for rapes and stuff like that. We're getting the Dave Carricks of this world, and the Wayne, what's his face? The other one.
Do you think that's got anything to do with desperation on the police recruitment side? Do you think it's less people and more bad apples, shall we say?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, they used that excuse, well, not an excuse, but they used that for anytime there's a series of American cops getting trigger happy, it always comes down to, well, this is what we've got to pick from. Nobody wants to be a cop anymore, sort of thing.
Well, Scotland had a huge problem because it didn't subscribe to the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, so there's no thing called PACE, so there's no rights to the prisoners in Scotland. So you could interview under PACE. Prisoners had rights, and these were legal entitlements that the police couldn't breach. And solicitors had to be present. Interviews would take place with solicitors present. Everything would be monitored. The police wouldn't be, on the whole, left alone. The investigator wouldn't be left alone with the prisoner. The solicitor always had to be there. And if you talk to them, it'd have to be recorded contemporaneously straight away and signed off, or it had to be done in the confines of a tape recorded interview scenario. Scotland had a system where they could interview someone. It didn't have to be tape recorded. If notes were taken in the absence of tape recording, they could be done in pencil.
Here's an actual grown-up question for you right here. John, what do you think are the measures that need to be put in place to reduce police corruption?
Okay.
Just delete it and start again, I would have thought.
Right. Well, I would say treat the coppers properly. They must be trained properly. Yeah. At the moment, it just seems appalling. Look, they've got rid of the big training centres. Discipline needs to come back and be installed. I don't bear well under discipline, but you need it. They need to be looked after. They need to be monitored. Coppers need to be given time out every now and then. So certain units, especially like child abuse, you shouldn't keep an officer in there more than 2 years. Some done 20 years in there. They were mentally ill. They were racked with PTSD. Just treat them the right way. Have a proper infrastructure. Go back and make it a career, a vocation, a lifestyle.
See, do you not think that when you say treat the coppers with respect, that it's very class-based, the response you're going to get to that? because I imagine at the top of the pinnacle of society, people would say, of course, I'm going to respect the police, John. Why could you say that? But at the bottom, where we're in low income areas, we've got little opportunities, we've got terrible family scenarios, and the police are seen as this negative. How would you address that?
Then they need to go back to robust policing, right? I gave a talk, a Mothers Against Knife Violence, right? It was in the East End of London. The majority of the audience were from the black community, and they'd lost children to knife crime.
Yep.
They knew I was a policeman, and I said to the families, what would you have wanted the police to do? And everyone, without exception, unanimously, the parents, majority of them were from the black community, said more stop and search. If the police were stopping and searching and taking our streets back, my son would be alive today. So when we see these liberals say stop and search is this, do you know, it's a nonsense. It's an absolute nonsense. The parents of dead children through knife crime all insisted the police need to be doing their job and stopping and searching. It's an embarrassment what you see now. They're running from criminals.
Do you think
they're being threatened and they're backing down? The police should never, ever back down.
No, I agree. But clearly that must be a budget thing, right? I mean, stop it and searching.
No, it's a managerial thing. It's political intervention. And there should never be political intervention in policing.
Do you think because the majority of the people you spoke to were black and from were black, do you think that affected how the profiling of the stop and searches would go, and the police feared the backlash, the accusations?
If you work in Bradford, right, you're going to stop and search predominantly local white lads and Pakistani boys, right? If you work in Brixton, you're going to be stopping mainly for black boys, right? If you work, let's say in Southall, you're going to be stopping mainly Sikh and Indian boys. It's the demographic of where you're working. That's what you're going to be doing.
But the papers don't report things nicely, John, when they try.
No, they don't. See, look, the police should be on the street. Police stations were geographically positioned to allow access for the public, so the public could go in to a town centre and report a crime. There should always be a desk sergeant there. There should be none of this telephone reporting, right? They should double the police numbers. They shouldn't be driving around in cars. There should be cars, of course there should, but they should be proactively and reactively going out there and hitting crime and looking for it.
I'm going to give you something that's going to completely back up everything you're saying there, right? Years ago, I used to run club nights. You hire out a venue, you put on a DJ, you sell tickets, you make your money. And I did it for years and years and years in Edinburgh. And, sometimes you might want to, stand around the corner and have yourself a little cigarette, if you know what I'm saying. And in Edinburgh, no problem. There was no police anywhere, okay? And then I went through to Glasgow, right, which is on the west coast, to run a club night there. And that's where Scotland's police budget is, okay? Because Friday and Saturday night, mate, I'd never seen as many police in my life, okay? And nothing was happening. There was just two bobbies, like with the introduction of the bill, where their wee feet are walking, two bobbies constantly everywhere, right? Yeah. Everywhere. It was mind-blowing. I'd never